Hello, my astrology family. This is Lada from astrolada.com. We continue. This is the last video of the 2021 astrology marathon, and we're focusing on the sign of Sagittarius. Whether you're a sun, moon, or ascendant in Sagittarius, this is the video for you. And our evolutionary astrologer, Brian, who is Sagittarius sun, will cover it. Hello, Brian.
Hello. I feel like I'm in the know about Sag, so I can talk about it. We'll have some fun. I know through personal experience, and it's a fun sign to talk about that. But I'm not biased at all.
Of course.
Yeah, of course not. So, all right, ready to rock? Here we are, both with this starry background. It's very appropriate for what we're talking about here with astrology. And first things first, let's just tap right into the archetypal field, the energetic texture of what it means to be a Sagittarius. As Lada said, Sun in Sagittarius, Moon in Sagittarius, Sagittarius rising. Even if you have some predominant structure with the planets in Sag in your chart, like a nice stellium, this will affect you or relate to you on some level as well, but especially with the Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. And I like to play with a trinity of three archetypes, usually with Sag, described in a good, better, best representation, usually, kind of like a totem pole. First thing I want to do is knock over the totem pole and honor each one of these very powerful symbols equally. And these three archetypes are the gypsy, the scholar, and the philosopher. And gypsy is the traveler. So to be more PC, let's say I'll use the word traveler because I started talking about gypsy in my last video, and somebody left a comment and said, hey, that's some low racial slurs in some countries. And I had no idea. Here I am, this very ignorant American. And in America, we don't have any negative connotations to the word gypsy. So we'll tweak it a little bit. I don't want to offend anybody. So the traveler, the scholar, and the philosopher. And travelers travel, obviously. So we're talking about the idea here of this, with Sagittarius, this motivation, because signs are motivational. They're like an intrapsychic process. They drive us, they motivate us to take action. And through the traveler archetype, the idea here is of an expansion into the realm of the unfamiliar, of the exotic, of the unknown, throwing ourselves into the great adventure of life. And in this case, culturally and geographically. It's also about getting the body in the idea of living, bodily engagement, a life lived passionately, okay? This sense of a fearless embracing of the unknown and the unfamiliar. This sort of feeling of, I'm just gonna roll the dice here. It's kind of a fun energy. And then we have the scholar archetype. And this isn't meant to be some, old, dried up prune of a professor in a college, although it can include that. But it's more of just representing the passionate mind. There's so much to learn in so little time, So again, expanding beyond the tyranny of the familiar, and in this case, conceptually and intellectually, centered in mind rather than body. And then the philosopher archetype, which represents the intuitive function of reaching out again beyond the tyranny of the familiar and embracing the unknown by asking the big questions in life, trying to understand why we're all here, what it's all about. The philosopher questions: why are we here? Where did we come from? What are we learning? What is the purpose of life? Are we alone? These are the questions of the philosopher. So hanging our hat on some sort of belief system, working with it. Now, a healthy expression of Sagittarius, a very immutable sign, so very malleable, is to have that belief system ever changing over time, which will get us away from the dark side of Sagittarius, which of course is important to look at the shadow as well. Every front has a back, and we'll explore that a little bit later. But all of these images, although they have different methods of going about the same goal, they all represent this idea of expansion. It's like God had a little chit chat with all of us Sages, and we said, God, what's the purpose of this upcoming life? And he looked at us and said, well, I want you to pack the experiences of 9 lifetimes into one. And we said to God, oh, good. Does that mean we're incarnating as a cat, with 9 lives? And God says, no, And then you said, well, God, will I be 343 years old? God says, no. So there's no time to waste is the moral of the tale, okay? Roll the dice. And yes is going to teach us more than no, okay? And we'll learn a lot. Yes will land us on our ass sometimes, but we learn a lot. It teaches us a lot. We're hardwired to make really interesting mistakes and learn from them. This is the traveler, sorry, the traveler, the scholar, and the philosopher, the sense of I dive into life. And for most sages, there's really a basic goodness to your spirit. There's really a basic openness. Also, it's a very generous sign, a generosity of spirit. And there's this desire in you, this wanting to align yourself with right. It's a very moral sign. Sounds a bit dry, but it probably shouldn't sound that way. It's this drive to align your behavior with cosmic principles. And of course, that leads rather quickly to moral thinking. And these are beautiful qualities about you. They're admirable, and you were born with them. Okay, but they're also being tempered in you into something far more precious. And in the cauldrons of experience, wisdom is being forged out of your basic goodness. So you're going to learn some things the hard way. That's great, Now, in terms of a general strategy for Sagittarius and what to avoid, it's basically boredom, If I were the devil and I wanted to curse you, and I wanted to suck all the life out of you, I would do it with boredom. I'd put you in a boring situation in which you felt very safe and comfortable and no possibility of learning anything at all. If you were to be in a situation like that long term, that would just suck the life right out of you. Boredom is your absolute kryptonite. Okay? So working with that energy. And by the way, for you, Lada, Aries, is boredom's your kryptonite too. That's something that those fire signs have in common, So if things get too mundane, too repetitive, boring, blech, and dull, time to go to Australia, or wherever you haven't gone before, or read some fascinating books. It doesn't have to be cross-cultural experience. If you live in New York, going to California is a cross-cultural experience, So anyhow, that's really working with, that's the life path of Sagittarius. So as I said, any of you with a lot of Sag in your chart, this is going to apply to you. Of course, we can narrow that down to the house of your chart by any astrologer looking at your birth chart, but that's the core life path. We want to learn things the hard way, the rich way, even though it leads to a train wreck sometimes, So we've been wired to make really stupid ass mistakes, and that's good. That's honorable work, and that's our path, packing the experience of many lifetimes into one. Now, I did briefly make mention to the shadow side of Sagittarius. I didn't really get into it. I said we'll talk about it later. Let's talk about it now. And to segue into that, I want to start talking about the nodes of the moon, okay? Because this is an important period of time for all of us. The nodes of the moon right now are in Sagittarius, South Node in Sagittarius, North Node in Gemini. And using the way to calculate the nodes that I use, according to my software, these nodes change signs June 5th of 2020. Some astrologers may say July or May, I forget which one it is. It's a month apart, but it doesn't really matter, within a month of each other. So right around June 2020, they left Capricorn, Cancer, and entered Sagittarius and Gemini. They'll be here until December 23rd of 2021. And here we're talking about Sagittarius. What does it mean in 2021? Well, to answer that question, we can't ignore the nodes here because they're in our own sign, okay? At least the South Node is. So from the evolutionary astrology perspective, the nodes of the moon mean a couple things. For starters, they say a lot about the collective karma. The karmic wave is breaking for everybody on Earth right now. So learning the lessons of Sag, Gemini is going to teach us all something, but us for certain, more so than others. And it also teaches us about the babies being born now. you know, that they have very Sagittarius themes in their past life experience. And this is something I talk about a lot, very much a part of evolutionary astrology, unique to the system. And I taught actually about reading the past lives by reading the nodes of the moon. So if you're interested in knowing more about your own karma and your own karmic medicine, or of that of your friends and family, it's really a priceless gift to learn that system. I did do a class on this, and I don't think Lotta mentioned it at the beginning, but we're going to start a promotion here for my classes, my 2 classes, the reading the karma of your chart, which applies directly to these nodes, and then also speed reading the birth chart.
The 30% off. Yeah.
Yeah. So 30% off. Come and get it, you know, the Christmas sale. So the collective karma, I'm not going to talk about personal karma here, you know, obviously. So we're going to tie in, what are we all learning here? And for starters, we recognize that the meaning of the nodes, the South Node in Gemini, we want to look at the South Node, no matter what sign it's in, a little bit more suspiciously, a little bit more askance, and focus primarily on the negative sign of that symbol. So in this case, the negative sign of Sagittarius. So we're growing beyond, the collective karma is growing beyond the bad habits of the bad shadow side of Sag and trying to embrace the high-end expression of Gemini, not to leave Sag in the dust and just become Geminis. You know, it's more about, it's a polarity. It's like a teeter-totter. And right now, the collective karma is lopsided in this dark side Sag direction. And by focusing on high-end Gemini, we balance out the teeter-totter. Okay, it's about polarity. It's about duality. Yeah, and the higher ground of working with an opposition is these opposites balance each other. So an opposition is relational. Okay, we're wiser together than either of us could be alone. Okay, and one side always benefits from listening to the other. So right now, us Sagittarius, that part of us where we suck, you know, there's beautiful things about Sagittarius, which I highlighted, but we take that philosopher archetype, we tweak it a little bit more darkly, and we say the preacher. Most of us Sagittarius get caught in the habit of getting on our pedestal, you know, or getting on our soapbox, you know, preaching to those, preaching the good word, you know, whatever it is our cosmology is, whatever our belief system is, whatever our religion is, meaning basically fixed set of ideologies and belief systems. You know, we can be religious about being a Christian, you know, or a Buddhist, or a Muslim, or whatever, you know. We can also be religious about being a Democrat, or a Republican, or an atheist, or a cynic, or a materialist. Are there people out there that make a god out of money? Yeah, definitely. And whenever we have a belief system, you know, that we're rigidly attached to in a very egoic way, we're never in alignment with the truth. I mean, as us humans, we can't possibly know. It sure is fun to think about as the philosopher, why are we here, you know? But again, we want to stay in that very mutable place as Sagittarius, ever bending, ever shifting, and allowing that version of our cosmology to continue to adapt. Dark side Sag doesn't adapt. It gets stuck and it preaches, you know. So the world, the collective karma, the world is drunk on religion right now. Everybody is so passionate about what they believe, and in somewhat fiery, assertive way, Sag the fire sign, really asserting their belief systems and putting it out there, you know, as the one true truth. And whenever any of us try to conceptualize God or God consciousness, it turns from God to fantasy, you know, fun to think about, impossible to know, you know, the one truth. So whenever we're drunk on any religion, we have blinders. The world, everybody to a certain degree, some illustrate this principle more than others, have blinders on right now. And they're fervently, in a fiery way, expressing what they believe. And so is everybody else, generalizing here. So there's a closed-mindedness that a lot of people are feeling, you know, and we're seeing that everywhere, you know. So we're attempting to embrace, especially us Sagittarius, more high in Gemini to find that balance point between the teeter-totter. Gemini is the sign of restlessness and curiosity, you know, following those threads of curiosity wherever they lead us. It's a sign of information. How do we get out of our rigid structures of belief? We learn new things, you know. So we take the great god Gemini and the great god Sagittarius, and let's say they work for a newspaper. What would the Geminis do? They would write the news. Tell me the truth. Give me the news. Just the facts, ma'am. Thank you. You know. What Sagittarius do? Well, they write the editorials. Not news, but Yahoo News, you know. Facts with interpretation too. It's like, what's going on here? What does this mean? So interpretive questions.
Yeah.
So shadow side Gemini, which we don't need to focus on too much here, but it's important to at least point to it, is data with no meaning, just chaos, running around in circles, you know, not really knowing what we stand for, looking at life as a dispassionate observer, you know. But this can help somewhat the Sagittarian influence, you know, if you have some of that Sag in you, if you're a Gemini, okay? Because it can help us to the Gemini folks out there to bring meaning and interpretation to those facts. Okay, so Gemini benefits from the balancing energy of Sag. Okay, so positive Gemini, deeply identified with questions, open to the great mystery of life, the endless student, supports the strong response to attracting the higher octave of Sag, a person of faith, a person who believes life is inherently meaningful. Okay. So we're trying to get away from this dark side of Sag, the shadow, rigidity, and fundamentalism, basically. Okay. So Gemini, the sign, you know, it is a sign of communication and data and information. Underlying communication is thought, underlying thought is perception. So the core meaning of Gemini is the sign of perception. So our medicine against dark side Sag, of this vitriolic, passionate, closed-minded belief system, okay, or systems, is to perceive reality more clearly, okay, through facts and information, a disclosure of truth. I feel like as the nodes continue to be in these signs through to the end of 2021, through the law of synchronicity, will attract information to us that is new, that's fresh, that's somewhat shocking, okay, paradigm shifting, okay. So we see people indoctrinated by their faiths, the faith of the Democrat, the faith of the Republican, the faith of atheism, faith this, faith that, closed-mindedness, okay, feeding polarity consciousness, and always being at odds with other people. And the insecurity of that faith is we feel like we need to convert everybody else. Dark side Sag, okay? We can fall into the trap of echo chambers too, confirmation bias, just to strengthen the belief that we already have. We find that all over the internet, you know, people finding those echo chambers. So Gemini serves as the medicine against fanaticism, against the brainwash, ego-centered attachment to beliefs. And so what we're experiencing, I believe, the karmic wave is breaking, a collective shattering of certainty, okay? So Sag is concerned with what it all means. Gemini is concerned with what actually is, okay? So I think it's important for all of us to contemplate, where am I not seeing things clearly here? You know, where can I allow my belief systems about reality to be, again, more malleable? So a good rule of thumb, especially through 2021, is just seek out fresh information instead of the echo chambers, you know? If you're a New Ager, seek out a Buddhist. You know, if you're an atheist, well, there's probably not too many atheists in this group, but if you're an atheist, you know, whatever, seek out a Scientologist. If you're a Republican, seek out a Democrat, you know, to have open-ended Geminian conversations with these people, not to adopt their belief system and just get rid of yours. That's, you know, not going to work. That's too extreme. Within every set of information, there's always some truth in there. And with a spirit of connection and collaboration with other people, find other people's truths and allow that to sprinkle into your own cosmology and allow it to breathe a little bit as you tap into this high end of Gemini to perceive with more clarity. It's like whatever I believe reality to be, it's not quite that. That's an utterly Geminian statement. Tap into the wonder, the awe, the shock and surprise in life instead of, you know, continuing to feel like you know what to expect in every situation, you know, because Gemini is a very surprising sign. So it's important for all of us to really contemplate with that energy and sit with it, because here, South Node, you know, coming right through our sign, asking us to look for that. Now, let's take a look at some of the other astrological weather going on for 2021. And really, there's two events of note here. One of them is actually going on right now at the tail end of 2020. And that's the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. If you've been following the astrology videos, pretty much every astrologer on the planet's been talking about them. It's a big event. It happens only once every 20 years. And it really depends on where it's landing in your own personal chart, okay? And I'll talk about that in a second. We also have the Saturn-Uranus square. That's a major feature of 2021. The Jupiter-Saturn conjunction I just mentioned is happening now and into January and you know, trickling into February as well. So that'll peter out rather quickly, but it'll still be going through the same house. So it's important for us to take a look at it. So this analysis will apply for the most part to people with Sagittarius rising, because the only way I can know or approximate what houses these planets are in is by knowing your rising sign. And with using the whole sign house system, you're having the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in your third house in the sign of Aquarius. And actually, I did a whole video with this with Lada about a year ago. So I'll just be kind of doing the Cliff Notes version here. If you want to dive a little deeper, I recommend you check out that video. So the meaning with Saturn, let's start there, because Saturn's really going to be in both of these events. Saturn, the greater malefic. Oh no, big bad Saturn making its influence. And of course, Saturn has been the major feature of 2020. It's not done being a major feature, because here it is leaving Capricorn, its own sign, and entering Aquarius, its own sign. You know, it rules two signs. So kind of got this 1-2 punch with Saturn. Saturn, from the evolutionary astrology perspective, it really wants us to just grow up. It's the planet of maturity. It's linked to the archetype of the wizard, which derives from the word wizened, you know, as we get old and gray and get credibility lines on our face. It represents wisdom. So humanity's attempting in this major Capricornian 2019, 2020, 2021, you know, we're all being called to grow up. And a natural consequence of growing up is we've having growing pains, you know. I'm sure we've all been feeling the growing pains of Saturn. But everything happens in astrology in our life because of the law of synchronicity in this interconnected universe, because it needs to. So we all need to grow up. And the best way to do that, in my opinion, is to really leverage the energy of Saturn. Although it's a bit uncomfortable, it's trying to push us to a whole new level of maturity. And working with it is to be more proactive, to be more diligent in our life, to focus a hardworking discipline in a particular area of our life, accomplishing a great work in our life that will require relentless effort, blood, sweat, and tears, and consistency to accomplish that hard work. It'll probably bring us to our knees, but Saturn says that's okay. It's time for you to do something that you're worthy of, some goal worthy of you, okay? But the good news with Saturn is you put in that hard work, you will be rewarded in kind, okay? What you shall reap, you shall sow, governs the law of karma, okay? So you put in that relentless effort, you will accomplish something great. There's virtue in that accomplishment, of course, but then it folds back into your consciousness as a deeper level of dignity, self-respect, and maturity. So that's the hard way, of course. Everything with Saturn is hard, but that's the best way to tap into that energy and achieve the evolutionary intention. Now, Jupiter, much different feeling. Saturn, the greater malefic, Jupiter, the greater benefic. It's not going to get us very far to think, oh, Saturn bad, Jupiter good, they cancel each other out. You know, that's not the case. The universe always finds a way. Although they represent very different energies, collectively, they're kind of a yin-yang wholeness. Jupiter's the faith builder from the evolutionary astrology perspective, whispering in our ear, hey, Sag, you're stronger than you think you are. So Jupiter wants big bets. It doesn't want any wimpy bets. If you're at the blackjack table and you sort of meagerly put your $5 chip, out there, Jupiter would laugh at you, Don't give me that wimpy bet, go all in. Jupiter wants us to go all in and have confidence that you can accomplish the hard work, even if you fake it till you make it. And if you have the audacity to believe in yourself and to find out where you're underestimating your own value and do the hard work necessary to push yourself beyond what you think are your limits, that's when the so-called lucky planet, the Jupiter, the greater benefic, really activates and the right people show up to support your goal, or just, circumstances that are eerily beneficial abound and the toast lands butter side up 82% of the time, simply because you believed in yourself. So there's some hard work you can accomplish that's going to require hard work and a faith in your abilities to accomplish it. So there's a pot of gold at the top of Mount Everest. All you got to do is climb the damn mountain, And it's going to require all that Saturnian hard work, also the very earthy values or earthiness of the Saturn to work all the tools and the ice picks and all that stuff. So there's that practical side. But you also got to, it's part mental, you got to believe you'll make it to the top to collect your treasure. Okay, there's the Jupiter-Saturn energy. So what's your great work at the beginning of 2021? Well, for you Sag risings out there, it's very much focused on the third house. Saturn and Jupiter just entered your third house. And that's a subject we'll be talking about for the other event too, because both of them involve Saturn. So the house, and by the way, big theme here, we uncovered right away, North Node in Gemini, third sign of the zodiac. We're trying to reach that high in Gemini. And then third house, third phase symbolism, absolutely central to our path in 2021. So third house, Gemini, not completely interchangeable, but there's enough overlap in meaning to create a big theme here. So you go on some pop astrology website, you say, hey, what does third house mean? And you're about guaranteed within the first couple of lines, you'll probably hear the word communication, the house of communication. And Gemini too is linked to that, as I said before. So speaking, Jupiter is saying, how are you underestimating your voice? It's time to be heard. We don't want any wimpy bets here in terms of, the power in your voice. It's time to speak up. It's time to get your ideas out there into the world, okay? But not in a preachy way, which is kind of we got to take a look at that South Node Sag, keep in mind, keep it in check. Jupiter says, don't be afraid to be heard, okay? And you're much more capable of putting yourself out there in terms of your voice, much more so than you've evidenced in the past, okay? So it's the house of learning as well. Maybe some of your great work is learning something, studying something, taking a new course in college or online class that will take a lot of focus and hard work on your part. Learning something that will help you to prepare your voice to make it worth being heard, okay? It's also the house of writing. When I think of a great work involving writing, maybe it involves, making a book or something like that, writing a book. That's a colossal great work. So if the rest of your birth chart and your natural inclinations, maybe you've had a fascination of, I got a book in me, well, now maybe it's a good time to start, or maybe share that poem at the poetry slam you've been avoiding, put yourself on stage, speak up. So push yourself beyond your limits and things will work out for you, Jupiter says. But it's hard, Saturn says. How badly do you want it? So that's really the integration of those planets. Now, I want to transition into the major aspect of 2021, and it even trickles out into the beginning of 2022. And this is the Saturn-Uranus square, okay? And Saturn, of course, is in that third house. And Uranus is going to be in the sixth house for most of you. So I'm not going to repeat what I said about Saturn. Really, we're still looking at the same evolutionary intention here, but we placed it really in the Jupiter third house context. Now let's tie in the Uranus sixth house. So Uranus. Here we have Saturn, the greater malefic, in a face-off, in a friction-based square with Uranus, the god of earthquakes and lightning bolts. It's like, ooh, sounds juicy, and it is. So with Uranus from this perspective, and by the way, Uranus rules Aquarius as well. So Saturn in its own sign of Aquarius, Uranus, the other ruler, the more modern rulership of Aquarius. It's almost like we got 3 votes for Aquarius here, or for Uranus. So the evolutionary intention of working with Uranus is basically the process of individuation. And that's kind of a fancy word. What it basically means is just becoming a truer version of yourself. We all, just as a byproduct of being a human being, we have the real self, the core, the soul essence of who we really are, our divine personality, if you will, the part of us that's been evolving over many, many lifetimes, our divine personality, the real you. And then we have this sort of amalgam of random extraneous cultural influences that have really shaped us. What I call our acquired personality, cultural programming. We're all, to a certain extent, some illustrate this more than others, brainwashed by culture and family. Okay? So we have this divine personality, the real us, and acquired personality. They kind of blend and merge together. We don't really know the difference between the two. We're a collision zone of essence and training. Nature and nurture is the way this is often talked about. And sometimes the part of us that has nothing to do with who we really are, rather than who we've been trained to be, okay, will grab the steering wheel in our life and make sometimes it's a significant choice. And as Sages, some of those choices were wrong, but we learned a lot through those experiences. But sometimes they were wrong. And usually when they're wrong, it's a byproduct of making decisions based on, what we've basically learned behavior instead of who we really are. So the process of working with Uranus is to become a truer version of ourself. It's about reclaiming the real self. So here we take this planet of Saturn, the great work of 2021. And that great work is the process of being more in alignment with our soul's personality, and less in alignment with basically our egoic expressions of our personality self, which is ever changing, ever malleable based on what we learn, basically. Okay. So the planet of earthquakes and lightning bolts, Uranus, is trying to have a lightning bolt of an event, a sort of shattering of realizing that, oh my God, who I am is not who I really am, And it's not that we completely shatter. It's just we have these realizations, especially with all this North Node in Gemini stuff, perceiving reality more clearly, the paradigm buster. It can be pretty shocking. Uranus is pretty shocking. Now, what I'm saying about Saturn Uranus is all very much on the personal evolutionary intention. Saturn Uranus has all kinds of global implications, which goes way beyond the scope of this reading. But we're very much talking about our inward personal journey here. And there's also something to say about Saturn representing structures, boundaries, rules, control mechanisms. Here we find all this Aquarius energy, the rebel, revolutionary archetype. And then Uranus, the awakener. Uranus, the rules breaker, Of all the planets, Uranus doesn't like rules. Saturn's is more of that camp, the rule camp. So here you have the tension from the square between the planet of rules and boundaries and expectations, and then Uranus that just wants to say hell with all the rules. because it represents this, this resistance to cultural norm, cultural expectations. So there's a feeling here of something's got to give, you know. And both of these planets, from my perspective, this is my opinion now, some other people may disagree. I relate both of these planets to the concept of change. The sleeping prophet from the 20th century, Edgar Cayce, he was a medical intuitive, but later in life, he asked more philosophical questions. And he was asked in deep trance many times about astrology. And he validated the efficacy and the power of astrology. So he's one of the reasons I actually started to study it, because I felt it was pretty compelling evidence that there's something to this stuff. Mm. Anyhow, he was asked about the different planets. He called Saturn the bringer of change.
Saturn?
Okay? Yeah. Yeah. But this is more, and again, some people may disagree, but, you know, Edgar Cayce was really, really drove down that idea, the bringer of change. And this is more slow moving change, you know, very earthy change. Whereas Uranus is more lightning bolt, sudden event change. Mm-hmm. So I said that line before, something's got to give. So the imagery here for 2021, you know, I think in a lot of our personal lives, but again, globally too, it's like the log jam gives away, you know, water floods through the land, changes the landscape forever. And hopefully it's more towards this awakened state, the awakener Uranus, as we tap into more freedom within the age of Aquarius, you know, which I feel like we're very firmly in now that Jupiter and Saturn have started this 200-year air cycle. I talked about that a lot in my last video. I mean, we could take this in so many different directions. So it's a time of great change for a lot of us as well. That's worth noting. And for Sag rising people, change in third house, sixth house dynamics. Now we can apply these two ideas, the great work of individuation in these specific areas of our life. And we talked about the third house already, the great work of learning, okay, so that we can find the true power of our voice, our unique, individuated, more rebellious voice, you know, that says, these rules are no longer working for me, okay? And this seems to be having effect on sixth house. And what I want to focus on here with the sixth house, it does have this whole more practical, more obligations, responsibilities, and duties of life. And Uranus in this, traveling through the sixth house, is linked to a reframing of those routines. Because Sagittarius is not so good with routines that are long-standing. Again, if things get boring, black and dull, throw yourself a curveball, okay? So with Uranus through the sixth house of the more mundane activities of life, it's time to shake things up, okay? The awakener, wanting to basically cause a rumbling in your fixed set of, of daily tasks and whatnot, you know, or patterns and routines. But where I want to spend most of my time is the sixth house is the house of service. Okay. There's an old Egyptian prayer that I really love for sixth house. It's something I give to those Virgos out there. So if you have Virgo in your chart too, this will resonate. It's God grant that today I do work that matters. Okay. It's about meaningful work. So something seems to be supportive between this third house, Saturn, this great work of learning, which will help to evolve and individuate your sixth house service. Now, work that matters. What makes work matter? There's a variety of answers to that, but usually what they all have in common is that we've made a difference in the lives of other people. Okay. So how can you change that? Your service work. Okay. So let's say there's an astrologer out there who has a very consistent, successful practice, and they're a Sagittarius. And they've been doing this practice for maybe 15 years or something. And it's going well, you know. All the signs are looking good because great word of mouth, always a booked calendar, etc. But this person has done it for so long that it starts to get a little boring, you know, so routine, getting sick of hearing yourself talk, you know, juggling the same archetypes every single reading, you know, it can get pretty monotonous. And on one hand, she has this beautiful, meaningful work on her life. But on the other hand, it's getting a little boring, you know. And she's been focused on this one sort of school of thought with astrology. Got a little religious about that style. There's that dark side Sag there. And she's getting a little bored with it. So she needs to throw herself a curveball. So she's been flirting with the idea of studying with this very exotic astrologer in another country somewhere, who has this 2-week intensive of studying this different school. And it would take great sacrifice and hard work for her to do that. The benefits is she gets to go to another country. Hell yeah, Sagittarius, let's go. But the downside is it takes more money, you know, than she'd like to part with, probably. Those retreats in other countries are quite expensive. And of course, there's the time expenditure, the focus of a 2-week intensive. Oh, that's very Saturnian, you know. And then, of course, the hard work of trying to integrate that into her practice if she finds that is doable. Okay. And then she does that hard work. She comes back, and maybe it's something fringy with astrology. I mean, astrology is fringy enough. All our colleagues are saying, "What? You're going to go study evolutionary astrology? You know, are you kidding? They believe in past lives, you know." There's that alienation signature with Uranus. Whatever this is, whatever you're meant to learn, it's going to be outside cultural norms. In this case, the mainstream of astrology. You know, they think they can read past lives. You know, what will they think? You know. But she goes and does it. She loves it. She learns a lot. She comes back. She starts integrating it into her practice. And she realized she's reached a whole nother level because she just had the openness to do was something that was fascinating her, that was exciting her. And that's a good way to work with Uranus energy towards individuation, by doing things that excite you. What has that juice? What has that sort of electric charge? If I had to describe the feeling energy of that, it would be that electricity, you know, lightning bolts. So look for those soul tickles, you know, that tickle up and down your spine, or the hair standing up on your arm, in terms of what new directions you should go. And that's probably the right direction. Also, that decision will probably look weird to other people. Okay. And then she starts doing her practice much differently, in a much more individuated way, as she blends these two very foreign systems. And she realizes that her counseling work goes to a whole nother level. And she notices that all her clients are starting to cry, you know. Now, that's not the goal for an astrologer. You know, if that's a goal for any astrologer, they got to get their ego checked, you know, but it is a symptom that you're hitting somebody on a very deep level. You know, it's going right to their heart. And if you're speaking a deeper truth, you'll do that more often, you know. And then we have this square here, which usually leads to a little bit of discomfort in the process. Part of that discomfort is the realization of, oh my God, what I've been doing for 15 years was flawed, you know. It sucked. And it leads to what? Some humility, which is a beautiful 6th house emotion or expression. Humility of the process, as you start to realize, I don't have it all figured out. Okay. So that's obviously, I'm not saying all you should start studying astrology, you know, but I like to tell a story like this because it brings into the spirit of the work. Accomplishing a great work in 2021, which can help us to be a truer version of ourselves. How we do that is follow what excites us. And of course, there's again, virtue in the accomplishment, but it also will help our meaningful work in the world. And to me, that's really the integration of these symbols working with these houses. And, you know, just broadly speaking, working with the nodes, it's all about tapping into that Gemini energy and just learning to adapt to your reality, you know. Or maybe it's not something about learning. Maybe it involves travel or mobility. That's a combination with Sagittarius in the 3rd house. They're both, you know, 3rd house is more short distance travel, you know. Sag and 9th house are more long distance travel, but they're both about travel. So maybe it's a part of a great work of your great learning to go to another country. You know, the idea of somebody quitting their job, leaving the big city, living out in the wild, you know, being a little bit uncertain about the way things are in the world right now. How is everybody else in the big city going to view that? You must be one of those preppers, or something. Are you crazy? You want to just go out and live with the trees? But with Sagittarius, it may be more like less getting into the wild and more getting to Thailand, So these symbols, they can manifest in a variety of ways, but it'll have this energy. No matter, the universe always finds a way, and that's the core evolutionary intention, with the goal always being to expand our consciousness. So that's what I had prepared for you guys, and hope you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed it too, Lada.
Thank you
And
so much. I
yeah,
did not interrupt at all. It just flowed like a story, all of it. It tied in so beautifully. And wow, thank you, Brian. See
yeah.
how you put together the third and the sixth house. And it also made me think that can mean learning, pushing yourself to learning something new so you can have more freedom in your work, more independent work, Uranus in the sixth, freelance or something like that. Learn new skills so you can become there. You can be more authentic with your work and not depend on someone, but be, Uranus, independent, sixth house, what you do, what your work. So this was a beautiful way to look at it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was fun to talk about, and yeah, I loved what you were saying. It's all about getting back to that authenticity, freedom, individuality. That's very much the family of Aquarius and Uranus, which we're really working with, all of us on the globe, over the next year to year and a half.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brian. If
Thank
anyone
you.
would like, they can see the two courses that Brian has created for Astrolada. They're discounted at 30%. You can learn all this evolutionary astrology foundations, basically. One is how to quick read the chart with evolutionary astrology. He gives you keywords and how to combine the sun, moon, or ascendant. And the other one is how to read your past lifetimes, the karma of the horoscope. It's fascinating how to weave a story with multiple examples. Thank you so much again, Brian. Have a lovely Merry Christmas and a happy 2021.
And may it be better than 2020.
It will be for Sagittarius,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, yeah. That's my New Year's resolution. A better year. Yeah.
As if you decide.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you. It was a pleasure, Lada. Take care. Happy holidays.
Bye. Happy holidays.
Okay, bye.